Welcome to the Geek podcast, where we game everywhere. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host Beej.
And by everywhere, we mean everywhere.
I don't know if I actually mean that. Today we're talking about gaming at work, and we're broadcasting live from the past, the future. We're broadcasting to the future from the past.
Future.
We're giving ourselves a week off for Labor Day, so this is recorded a couple weeks in the past. But we want to talk about this because the topic came up about, like, how do you let your coworkers know you're a geek, and how does being geeky affect your work life? And it's kind of a question of, like, how much you let that show through or don't over time, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and it's something that we've both had really different experiences with, but neither of them have necessarily been negative in the way that I know some people have been shunned for letting people know that their geeks or mocked or made fun of, and that's not been our experience at all. I don't think that's never happened to me. I'm not sure about you. I don't think so.
No, it hasn't happened to me either. I've had pretty good experiences. It's definitely been interesting to see how things change going from being an employee to a manager. Things are different now, but let's start with, like, let's go back a little ways, because I used to do more gaming at work, and I know that you used to do a lot of, like, talking to your students at work when you were a director, right? And maybe that's a good place to start.
Yeah, when I was teaching at the college, I mean, I started teaching freshmen, I guess. I started teaching developmental English when I was 25 years old. So I wasn't really that much older than the people I was teaching, and a lot of times I was younger than the non-traditional students. And in order to, one of the things, like, they were talking about games and I was a gamer, I would just hop into a conversation because I'm just talking about stuff I love. And so those were with my students, and that was a really good way for me to build a rapport with people I didn't know. And I made friends that way. And I know people are like, you don't need to make friends with your students and everything like that, but there's a big difference in college students versus high school students in terms of the relation. I shouldn't say in terms of the relationships that you have, but in terms of the friendships that you can form. There's a difference in terms of how that's looked on. And when I started working at the Learning Center, I was there as a tutor, so I was just kind of hanging out with people who were there anyway, and we would talk about the same things. And as I became an administrator, moved into assistant director and then director, I didn't change that because I wanted people to be comfortable coming to me. I didn't want to be the guy who they could come in and talk to about Star Wars and about Final Fantasy and all of this, and then suddenly cut that off and try to be super professional and, like, have that boundary. A, that's not me. I'm not super professional. And B, it would be indicative of, like, me not caring about them. And I used that as a way to connect with them because that made them comfortable with me. That when we would sit and when we had downtime, we would play Town of Salem on the computers, and that's how a lot of us got to know each other at work. We would, my friend Austin made a Tetramaster game of physical cards that we played together from Final Fantasy IX. It was a mini game in Final Fantasy IX, and just stuff like that where everybody knew what we did. We talked MMOs, we talked about everything, and I did that to specifically make sure that I had a good relationship with my students, because even though I was their supervisor, that they could look at me like a person because I like the same stuff they did. But that's really different from what I've heard from you in terms of being a manager in a corporate setting.
Oh yeah, it's way different because, like, right now I don't do much that's, like, outwardly geeky in the workplace. And it's not that I'm hiding it, but it's so different than, like, right when I started professionally, and I worked in a marketing agency. This is when I was doing, like, full-time video production and editing. I used to play, like, N64 against one of my coworkers daily. That, like, we had an ongoing duel for years and years and years in Smash Brothers, which was awesome. Just every day we'd play. And then there were times in that agency setting where there would be a group of, like, 10 of us that would all play an FPS together during lunch, like just for months at a time. Every lunch hour, we'd all jump in the same server and play against or with each other.
Really?
Usually a combination of the two. So for a while, we did just like private LAN server for like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which was outdated at the time, but it was still fun with the group that we had. And then Counter-Strike Global Offensive came out, and we all migrated to that together. So we would play like every single day. And outside of that, I also had a group that I did like gaming, like tabletop gaming with. So this is where I really got into LCGs, and I've never super been into CCGs, but this is where I got into LCGs. Was one of my coworkers that is still a friend of mine, actually. He's super into card games in general and like all kinds of tabletop board gaming, but he's definitely a card game guy. And he would bring in decks. Like he would own every single card. He'd own like 3 copies of every single card of an LCG so that he could literally make any deck possible in the entire game. And he would come in with like top tier decks from global tournaments that had like won, right? So he basically would bring in updated meta decks every week. And it was amazing because I don't like deck building. I like piloting really well-made decks. And he would come and just have a bunch, and he would be trying to like test out a deck for regionals or worlds or whatever. And he would just want me to pilot all of these other decks against him. So he'd just hand me a freshly made deck that was top tier and say, this is how it's played, pilot it against me. And I loved that.
That sounds awesome to have that, because I'm like you. I don't really like building decks. I like having something that I can play and I have a good time with. And that was one of the things I like about LCGs in general, because you don't have to collect all of the cards. You just buy the expansions and they're there. And so having someone who just bought all of them and did that, out of the box would be fantastic.
Yeah, so I had a period of years there that was great for being geeky at work. And like my desk, my edit suite, they would just be covered in geeky things. I had them on the walls, I had them on my desk, all of that kind of stuff.
Having geeky stuff in your office, like that was one thing I did. Like I had my office just decked out. One of my students bought me a Stormtrooper helmet at a yard sale, like a full size, like put it on. Not Stormtrooper, Clone Trooper helmet at a yard sale, and I put it on, and like it was great. And I had it in my office and all sorts of other stuff. And right before I left, nobody had ever said anything about it. We got a new provost, and she started telling me that I needed to take that stuff down because it was unprofessional, and it wasn't 6 months later that I was gone. It's like that's not an environment I could be in, where that was specifically frowned on when other people in the college have their personal stuff in there. Like that was specifically about the geeky stuff, like the Ravenclaw poster I had, or a framed picture I had.
And like, so these days being a manager, it's definitely different. And it's not, like I said, I don't try to hide my geekery. Like, I will gladly talk to anybody about any geeky thing. Like, I love that. And if people are interested in it, like my employees and stuff, if they bring up like Infinity War, right, I'll talk to them about it. Like, I do weekly one-on-ones with everyone who works for me because I think that's important. And I'll do a deep dive onto anything that they want to talk about that's geeky. But there's a difference when you're a manager of like imposing your own geekiness onto other people that I never want to do that, but now I'm at the point where like, if I start talking about it in a way that's like, I really like this, I don't want to feel like I'm pressuring my employees to have to act like they like it to be able to talk to me. Do you know what I mean?
That makes a lot of sense, because that was something that would never come up. I had students look at me like, I never seen Star Wars, you're going to fail me. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But they would always say it in a joking way. Yeah,
it's different in corporate America because there's that whole thing to think about, right? Is like how I relate to other people and how people view me. And there's a power dynamic thing going on there too, that like, I just never want to impose that on people. So if they bring it up, I will talk about it, and I'll talk about it to death because I love it. But if they don't bring it up, I don't bring it up is kind of where I'm at right now. The other thing is that like I work in an open office right now and I'm a manager. So if I had my desk covered in geeky stuff, that would say something about me as like a manager that I'm not trying to project, really. Again, if I'm talking to one of our vendors or one of our clients or like one of our customers or something, and they bring it up, I'll talk about it all day. Like, I'm not hiding it, but I don't go out of my way to display it in the same way that I used to, because it's corporate America. Like, you have to present yourself in a certain way up front. That's very much like, I don't know. It's dumb, but I play the game because you kind of have to.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who have like one or two things that are put on a shelf that are just surrounded by their normal office stuff, where if somebody sees it, they can start that conversation.
And if I had an office, that's exactly what I would do. But since I'm in an open office, I just have a desk that everyone can see all day, every day. I can't even really get away with that.
No, like I have a friend who has just the Back to the Future DeLorean Funko Pop, all of that stuff just sitting around, just kind of in the middle of different books and art and things like that. And when people talk about it, man, he loves it. So he'll talk about Back to the Future and Funko and all of this, but it's not something he'll ever just bring up on his own because just sitting off to the side in his office.
Well, and so this is one of those things that's interesting because I will, like, if I do take a lunch break, which hasn't been much lately, but when I do, if I can, like, get away from my desk and go sit somewhere, I'll play games on my phone, like just small games, whatever is a phone game at the moment. So like Fire Emblem Heroes or, like the 4-Job Fiesta and JRPGs that are on my phone, I'll play those. Yep. I would probably do Fortnite, but my phone isn't quite good enough for it right now. I'm probably overdue for a phone upgrade. But one of the things that has stuck in my mind was when my mom was still working, she's retired now, but she said that the Kindle was the best thing that ever happened to her for reading at work. And I asked why, and she's like, because people can't see the cover of my book. And I was like, that's dumb. What do you mean? But now that I'm a manager, I 100% agree. Like the fact that I can read on my phone over lunch and it looks like I'm just looking at my phone, no one knows what I'm reading, that is so freeing that it's crazy.
I've thought of that just out in public, like when people were reading, smut, but I've never really thought about it in terms of, just from a perspective of you don't want your employees to see that you're reading something silly.
Yeah, and it's dumb, but it's the game that you play in corporate America, right? If I didn't want to be playing this game, I could go back to freelancing, or I could go get a job that doesn't involve being in an office all day, every day. But I like what I do, so I'm willing to work within the system to make it happen and to keep advancing. It's dumb, though. Like, I'll be the first to admit that. And that's why anytime anyone else brings up something geeky, I will always engage them about it because I'm not hiding it. I'm just not displaying it.
And it's so different in our company because we're a huge company and we are our software, Silicon Valley software tech company. I mean, their offices are, I say there because they're the ones who are actually in the office, but our offices are in San Francisco despite having a remote team everywhere else. It's very much that kind of, even in Slack and when we go to conferences together, it's still that kind of Silicon Valley kind of open office vibe where our CEO, we had an Airbnb at a conference last year. Our CEO just was sitting on his Switch playing The Binding of Isaac, and we sat and like in our Lyfts back and forth because we're not using Uber. I mean, no, we all used Lyft, and while we were on Lyft, we would talk about Brandon Sanderson books and the video games we were playing on Switch and Zelda and all of this, and I wasn't the one bringing it up. Like it was fantastic. Every Monday we have a group meeting. We basically have our stand up on Google Hangouts, and we like kind of talk about what was going on the week before. And my supervisor, he talks about VR. Like he and his wife have a Vive, and she's way more of a gamer than he is. But he'll talk about VR and what he played that weekend. Just this week, he was talking about getting his parents playing it, and his dad kept on trying to play more. Like he wouldn't do it just once. He was like, I got to do this better. I got to figure out what I did wrong. And while we were at that same conference, his wife didn't answer his calls or texts for the entire day. Like from about 9 a.m. till I think we went out to dinner at maybe 7-ish. Like she didn't answer or call him. And finally he got in touch with her. And it's because she was playing Skyrim VR all day long, that she didn't take the headset off, that's what she did all day long and didn't look at her phone. And that's really an easy culture for me to fit into, where it's not something like we just talk about, but we're not afraid to talk about it. We one of my coworkers has he had an MK2, a Mortal Kombat 2 arcade machine in his house as a kid, and so he and his brother got like mega good at it, like better than anybody I've ever seen. So when we went to an arcade bar after one of the nights of the conference, they had a Mortal Kombat 2 machine, and he schooled everybody in that building that it was just insane. So I saw Mortal Kombat Trilogy on GOG over Christmas, so I bought that for him. I was like, here you go, play this now. It was just stuff like that we're comfortable with it. It is, even when our CEO pulls out a Switch, like that really is it. It's like, yeah, I'm playing Binding of Isaac, I just want to do this. It's like, cool, that's really where it is. But we are also not just straight up corporate America, because they're in Silicon Valley doing that, so it's a different corporate culture. If they didn't do that, it would be weird.
Well, and part of it too is that, like, without getting too far into specifics, the demographic of my workplace is very different than me. Like, I am an outlier, even though I'm a straight white male in my 30s. Like, that is not what most people at my work are. And it's not that it makes it harder to relate to people. It's just that people have vastly different interests than I do. And there's that power dynamic thing, right? Like, anybody who's at a lower level than me in the org chart, in the company, I don't want to impose, but like the higher you go up an org chart, the less people there are. So everybody who's like at my level or above, I know for a fact that none of them are into games, because I've tried to talk to every single one about it, and it has never clicked. So it's like, all I need is one other manager in the company, someone at or around my level who likes games or likes the same geeky stuff I do, and then I will have like a buddy for life that I can just, go and talk to at the proverbial water cooler about it. I don't have that right now.
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, for me, that would be really hard. That just not having anyone to share that kind of stuff with. But I'm very much a talker. I'm a sharer, if you didn't notice. And so I have to have somebody. I will talk to anybody about anything at any given time. And so for me, that would be very hard, not being able or feeling comfortable to do that.
Yeah, and I'm comfortable. It's just I'm very cognizant of what it means to be a manager and how that changes power dynamics. I think I put a lot more thought into that than I think a lot of other managers do. And I don't know if I've overthought it, but it definitely influences me.
Yeah, and I mean, whether or not, overthinking or whatever, it's not been a detriment to your management style. It's not as though, one way or another, there's a right or a wrong answer on this. It's just that's how you happen to handle that particular situation.
Yeah, so I hope to get back to it again in the future. I mean, as my business scales up and more people get hired, there's more and more chance. But until then, I'll just make do with Slack whenever I can, like, sneak on during the day and talk to people. I don't sneak
Join
very
our
much.
Discord.
But no, I can't really do at work. But Slack I can kind of keep up some days. It really depends on how my day is going.
Actually, I've heard that a lot from people. That's why one of the reasons we have both is that they can do Slack while they're at work, and it looks like they're working, and Discord is much harder, even with it being on their phone.
Yeah, that being said, I don't think I've been in our Slack channel during the day for like 2 or 3 months now because I've been so busy.
You've been swamped.
Yeah, I'd like to get back to that at some point, but it hasn't been recent. And it's usually just like checking in a little bit here or there throughout the day between other stuff when I need a quick 5-minute mental break from whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, I understand. That's actually, gaming at work, talking about that, that's actually one of the things I'm using World of Warcraft for right now, is that I've had a really fuzzy head. I'm still in that kind of grieving and mourning where, stuff hits me with all the stress, and I can't concentrate anymore. I can't focus for really long times, and I'll keep WoW up on a monitor right now where I'm not doing anything. Somebody on Discord made a comment this morning about, BJ's on WoW again. And it's like, yeah, I was. Because on Discord it shows, playing World of Warcraft. And yeah, I was. At that point, I was actually playing it because it was like 7:30 in the morning. But I just keep it on. It'll show I'm in World of Warcraft probably like 8 or 9 hours a day whenever I'm on there. But I game at work to clear my head. That I'll go do a world quest or something and then get back to actually being able to write and think about whatever it is, what tutorial or whatever I'm putting together that day. That I literally game at work because it helps me do better.
Yeah, I noticed that in freelancing too. Just being able to take like a real true break from things for like 10 or 15 minutes can make a huge difference. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, corporate culture in America doesn't allow that. Like if I had my say, I would let all my employees do that. Like I'd encourage it, but corporate America. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a mixed bag. That's probably it for the main topic today. Why don't you talk about Patreon for a little bit?
So we have a Patreon, you guys, and whether you do it at work or whether you do it when you get home, you should go to Geek to Geek. No, you should go to patreon.com/Geek to Geekcast and check out supporting the podcast. It's really awesome. We would really appreciate it. And you can do all sorts of cool stuff, like you can tell Void and me what to talk about if you want to. Just check it out, and I hope you enjoyed my ridiculous segue.
There you go. Good job. On the network this week, I don't know, because we're broadcasting from the past. Geekitude and Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea, you should check them both out. They're fantastic. I'm sure they have released an episode this week that I will have listened to by the time you're listening to this. But again, we're recording ahead of time, so that's all I know. How about Weekly Geekery? You said you've watched The Defenders finally?
Yes, we finally sat down and watched The Defenders. This weekend, we just kind of got into a mood where I know a couple of weeks ago, or for us, a few minutes ago, but a couple of weeks ago for the listeners, I was talking about how we wanted to go see more grown-up movies and not the blockbustery kind of MCU movies all the time. But this weekend, we got into the mood to actually watch the Netflix MCU stuff. And because we love the characters there. We love Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, and we decided that if we're going to do this, we're going to watch The Defenders because they're in it, and skip Iron Fist because it's terrible. And so we started this, and I really, really liked The Defenders. Like, I really like The Defenders. I wanted to watch it all the time. We're going to finish recording here, and I'm going to go and we're going to start Jessica Jones season 2 tonight. But The Defenders is kind of dumb. Like, it's weirdly engrossing, though, that the story has a lot of mystical mumbo-jumbo from Iron Fist, and I didn't have to know any of what happened. I've never even looked at what happened in the end of the season, and none of it mattered. Like, they basically sum it up in that Danny Rand is kind of dumb, and he makes dumb decisions. Like, that's it. And Jennifer and I being able to just sit there and make fun of Danny Rand, like make fun of the actor, make fun of the character, everything about it. Like, we would just giggle all the time at him, just make these just snide comments. And it was wonderful because he's ridiculous and super dumb. And he was the worst part of the show, but also we enjoyed it because we liked making fun of him, even though the story wasn't terribly well written or thought out. We wanted to know what happened. Like, we were engaged, and we wanted to know what they were talking about. I mean, Sigourney Weaver's in it, and she makes everything better. That I don't know if the character she was playing was well written or not, but it was Sigourney Weaver, so I enjoyed watching her play that character. And so we finished it up. We loved it. I did not like the end of the season, so I'm interested to see how it plays out in the coming shows that are coming out, and that I haven't seen and that are out, I guess. But I noticed that as the show ended and the final credits rolled, it said that Iron Fist Season 2 was coming out in about 3 weeks. Maybe next week, depending on when you guys listen to this. Could be this week. This is Labor Day week that you guys are listening to it. It might be out this Friday. So how about that? That exists. That's
Why,
a thing.
though?
I don't know.
Why?
I was honestly hoping that they would kill him off in The Defenders because how much fans hated the show, how bad it is. And it's objectively bad. Like, it's not even one of those where, I don't even remember, where Solo was one of those where you said it was fantastic and it would have been a great movie and fantastic if it hadn't been a Star Wars movie. Iron Fist isn't that. Iron Fist would not be a good show if it wasn't an MCU show. It's just objectively bad television with bad acting in it and bad writing. And so I was expecting them to be like, okay, we got the mystical hand story out of the way. We've done everything with Iron Fist that we needed him to do, and he's dead. Nope. Nope. They're giving him a season 2. I had no idea about it until last night, and I just don't understand. I have no idea what they're thinking, why they're not doing other shows and telling stories and telling the same story to tie in with the other shows, but not with him.
Yeah, I don't know
it
either. Iron Fist 2 doesn't make sense to me, but I guess they're going to do it. So we'll
and I'm
see.
going to watch it. I'm going to start it because it's going to be bad. I'm going to watch the same amount of it that I watched for season 1, which is like 2 episodes maybe. And I'm going to be like, nope, still dumb. And I'm not going to watch any more of it. But I don't understand.
Okay. So this week I started getting more into World War II, which I said I was going to do. I watched a Netflix documentary, which I think was a BBC documentary, just called D-Day. That was very interesting. And then I went back and I rewatched The Imitation Game. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't. I've wanted to. That's the one with like Bambersnatch Bumberflop, right?
Yeah, it's Benny Batch.
Yeah, Benedict Cumberbatch, I know.
Yeah, it's really good. I like that movie a lot. It has a very depressing, like, not post-credits, but you know when the movie's over and then like the text scroll comes up with like what happened after that or the rest of their life, very summarized? That's extremely depressing. But right up until that point, it's a fantastic movie. It's good. It's about breaking the Enigma code. Well, the Enigma is a machine and like a code in World War II that the Nazis were using, and it's about cracking the Enigma, essentially. It's also about inventing the computer and the father of computing with Turing and the Turing test and stuff like that. So it's extremely fascinating. If you've never seen it, even though it's kind of a war movie, it's really a lot more about code breaking and encryption and the father of computers and like the first real computer that ever existed. It's super, super interesting. And then I tried watching The Pacific again, The Pacific in capital, The Pacific, which is the second Band of Brothers that they did. So I think it might be called Band of Brothers, The Pacific, but they always, I don't know. It's weird. It's one of those things that's hard to Google for. But it's not good. Like I like Band of Brothers so much, and it's like one of my favorite, if not my favorite miniseries ever. And The Pacific just doesn't connect with me, which is always disappointing. Like this is the 3rd or 4th time I've tried to watch it, and I just can't get through it. So I kind of bounced off of that one. Have you ever tried that one?
No, I've never tried either of those.
Try Band of Brothers before you try The Pacific.
Oh yeah, I've heard wonderful things about Band of Brothers, not just from you, and I have probably maybe heard The Pacific mentioned by an actual human being 3 times maybe. Like it just doesn't get talked about, and I guess that's why.
Yeah. And I've still been very busy at work, so I've been playing dumb idle games, which are dumb. I will grant you that. I've been playing this one called Merge Plane that I think I finished last night. I think I'm done going back to it. But you get planes and you make them go around a track, and every time they go around the track, they make a little bit of money, and then you can use that to buy more planes, and then you can merge them together, hence the name, and then put them back on the track. It is an idle game through and through, but it was fun for me for like 3-ish days, which is kind of all I needed. I just keep going through one idle game after another. I'm very close to being done with the super crazy busy work to back to like normal amounts of busy. So, also games are coming out soon, like games I actually care about, like Spider-Man, and then all the other fall releases after that. So idle games are going to take a backseat very soon.
But I hope so. Like for real. I mean, I'm not even saying that in a judgy way, but I would hope that you put away idle games when actual games come out that you don't like these enough to continue playing over other stuff.
It's something that's like just enough interaction, but like my brain is dead because I've been working 70-hour weeks. That's when I play idle games. So I'm hopefully almost done with that part of the year here. But if you need an idle game, like I did, Merge Plane isn't bad. It's okay. The other thing I've been doing is I checked out Mastodon, which, have you heard of this?
I have. I've heard of it. I may have an account somewhere on that one, but I don't remember what it is. Like, I'm intrigued by it. And I read, I think it was Belgast. Was it Belgast? I think it was Belgast who was talking about it. And he wrote a long post about how it is a federation, a federalized social network with islands and things like that, rather than having an overarching system like Twitter, a corporation holding all of it, that they're different. It's an open source software. And It's
Yeah,
interesting.
it is. So what I put down here is that I'm intrigued but not convinced by it. It's very interesting. It's kind of like, so I've been thinking about this for a week because I knew I would talk about it on the show. I think the best way to describe it is that it's like an interlinked series of independent Twitters is
Yeah.
kind of what it is in a nutshell. It's the other things you said. It's federated. They all kind of interlink. It's an open source thing, which is pretty cool. But one of the things that it has that Twitter doesn't have is moderation on a local level. So you can make an account on any instance of Mastodon, and that instance kind of acts as like your home server, for lack of a better term. So if we had a Geek to Geek one, which we don't, but you could be BJ at Geek to Geek, whatever. It would basically be like your name within the instance. So like there's a second part of your username, that's the instance. And you can have as many accounts across as many different instances as you want, but because the system is all federated and connected, you can send messages to or follow people or look at other things from other instances, which is kind of weird. It's weird to get your head around. But once you do, what you realize is that like if you find a good instance of it that has moderation that you agree with and like good quality people in it, it's a really cool way to meet other people on the internet, which is not true of like any other social media platform out there because they just lack moderation and they just give everything to you all the time. And you can't hide your information from other people either. You know, like when you request to follow someone, they have to accept you. You can't just automatically see them on Mastodon. They have to accept a request. So that's something that's really different. And then you can block off entire instances. So if you think like this is a toxic instance over there, I interacted with one person and they're going to like sick all of their other friends on me for whatever, like Twitter is kind of what I'm trying to get at here. You could block that instance and everybody in it and everything from it from ever seeing you again or you ever having to interact with them again.
So you could block the entire, like if you have doo-doo face at turdburglar.poop who is just the worst, you can then block anybody from turdburglar.poop and none of them can message you.
Yes, exactly. So it's really weird to get your head around the structure, but it's kind of trying to get back to having like smaller tribes on the internet and moderating your tribe, to the point where it's fun to interact with those people and you can kick off all the bad actors.
Yeah. And that's something like we talked about weeks and weeks ago, maybe months, that's something that we did, that I did, I think you did as well, blocking certain keywords on Twitter to make it a little less toxic and a little less stressful to actually use it to unwind. And Mastodon, I love the idea of having the islands of social, because we talked about how that's how we met on individual blogs. That's one of the things we like about Bloggist, is bringing community back into it and going to different places and interacting with people in different places in a smaller community like Discord and Slack. But for some reason, Mastodon, I don't know, there's something about it. Like you said, you're not convinced yet. And I'm like, I can't see a reason to buy in on this yet. That it's they haven't.
One of the things that's interesting, because I put some thought into this too. There's that other social network out there that tried to be like the anti whatever, because
Vero,
Elo, is it like Elo or something like that?
Oh yeah, like ELO.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? So
yeah, Elo, Elo.
That was like, we're not like Facebook, but we're like Facebook. And if you look at what they were trying to do, is it's the same business model as Facebook, but you had to get an invite. And it just doesn't have as many people, and it hasn't taken off super well. Whereas Mastodon is distributed. It's an open source platform, and it has actually been like more successful than any of the other social media startups lately, outside of the ones you already know, like Instagram and like, Snapchat and stuff like that. But because it's this open source, like it seems to keep growing over time and more people are using it as time goes on. And it might have a future. I don't know. I don't see it ever overtaking Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, any of those ones, but I see it possibly being a really good place to have a small community of people. And you and I keep talking about that lately, which is why I got on and I started trying Mastodon, because this kind of goes hand in hand with some of the stuff we've been talking about finding our community online.
And I think I'm hesitant because it's strangers. In these instances, it's not somewhere like going to Belgast's island. It's going to this place where they are, where just other people are that I have friends there. And for me, like, I started Twitter like 10 years ago, so that doesn't feel that way to me, like somebody coming new to the platform now. And it's so I guess for me it's a little intimidating just to be surrounded by strangers and starting new, you know?
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And it's one of the reasons where I said, like, I'm intrigued but not convinced. I just wanted to put it out there so that if anybody else has been feeling like I have, that they wish there were better alternatives, know that there's something out there that you could at least take a look at, you know? So Mastodon's interesting. I'll report back if I keep using it. I mean, I keep poking my head in there and seeing what it's about, but it's not what I go to by default. And I don't know if it will be, but it's worth checking out. It kind of is. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, and you can get to it at joinmastodon.org, and I'm actually flipping through it right now, and there are apps for the phones, which I didn't realize. I thought it was just a mobile web experience or a browser experience, but there are 4 listed Android apps and 2 on iOS.
Yeah, I signed up for the instance that I joined through the web, and then I've only ever done anything through my phone. So yeah, the apps are pretty solid. Like the app that I use makes it feel very close to Twitter, which I'm extremely comfortable with because like you said, I've been there for like 10 years now. So that's cool. Oh, the other fun thing is that they're not called tweets, they're called toots.
I'm not sure if I would be able to keep my composure.
So there you go. Go check out Mastodon and toot away. With that, it's probably the end of the show. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback, or toot at us. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast, or I don't know, maybe on Mastodon. You could toot at us someday. We also have longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And we also have great discussions on Slack and Discord and maybe someday Mastodon. You can go to discord.geek2geekcast.com or slack.geek2geekcast.com to hang out with us. We also, we're part of a podcast network, so go to geek2geekcast.com to see all the shows. You cannot go to mastodon.geek2geekcast.com yet.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's that I stole from him. And I blog at geekfitness.net.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Toot toot!
Hi everyone, I'm Katie.
And I'm Chelsea, and we are the hosts of Tea Time with Katie and Chelsea. We are 2 best friends who love pop culture and talking about pretty much whatever we want. Katie!
Yes?
Stop thinking about Zac Efron and tell our future listeners what some of our latest episodes have been about.
Well, we've talked about Zac Efron.
No, get it together, Katie.
Fine. We've talked about fan fiction, classical literature adaptations, favorite TV couples, and so much more. So grab your cup of tea or whatever your drink of choice is and download our podcast today.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.